good evening to what few of you may be listening. And good morning to the Europeans. Good to see I'm tired. Yes, I am tired, and I also did try. Thank you, Diggs. Okay, let me see here. Um, well, that's nice and pretty for the actual look at the table, but I'm gonna need to dial that up a little bit. Hey, Kai. How goes? Okay, focus going up. Exposure. Whoa. Oh, that's actually perfect, I think. Let's see what happens. So, how's the focus on that now? Much better. Sup, Swish? Oh, right. I am supposed to introduce myself, I suppose. My name is Yippee-I-O. I've also been dubbed the Coffee Baron, because I attempted to stop Tex when he had the bright idea of trying to make recursive coffee by brewing coffee by using coffee that had been brewed, like replacing the water in his coffee machine with already brewed coffee 3 times. Yeah, I stopped him from doing that. So he named me the Coffee Baron. That I might make a video about it sometime, but we'll see. Okay, I think that looks okay. Um, One of my fans on my computer is going out, so if you hear a knocking sound, please let me know. But I don't think it's able to be heard at the moment. And aside from that, if you have any, if you can't, if it's out of focus or anything, or if you think that it needs to be a little bit brighter, just let me know. I can kind of see what's going on, but it's a little bit delayed. So, okay, let's get to work. It's nighttime. That means it's painting time, or at least time to kind of wind down for the evening. Okay, sweet. Thanks, Swish. Yeah, no worries, Kai. Paint it solid gold. Well, a solid gold zombie would be entertaining and that would be fun, but I've already kind of got my fill of gold. Let me see here. 1 second. I don't know how well these would actually show up on stream, but something I've been experimenting with recently is on the Adeptus Titanicus models. I had been experimenting with gold leafing. I'd never done any gold leafing before, but I did the leafing and then did transparent paints on top of it, like to be a clear, so it kind of came out with a candy coat. Let's see if this will show up at all. Get back to where I can actually see it off to the side. Yeah, that's just going to be blasted out with the light, I think, no matter what I do. Because it's just so damn reflective. But, yeah, the center parts of it are all done with gold leafing and gold flake. Can I move this over here a little bit? That's a little bit better. Yeah, there. But you do the candy coat on top of it, it kind of comes out looking like a balloon. Anyways, I've had my fill of gold for the time being, so I need to go down to some more muted colors. Something a little bit darker and a little bit more chill. So, I figured if it's this late at night, might as well go with the Creatures of the Night theme for the time being, so I pulled out some vampire models that I have had sitting off to the side for a while with the intent to use them for Mordheim. The model name, are you asking like the type of model, as in like the product, or are you asking like the if I've actually given the Titan a name yet? Well, I guess I can answer both. those pieces that I was picking up were for the Nemesis Warbringer Titan. That's the one that's like the hybrid between a Reaver and a Warhound, or a Reaver and a Warlord that has a big artillery piece style cannon on its back. Good for indirect fire. I think I wrote down a name for it somewhere, but yeah, Nemesis Warbringer. If you just type in like Nemesis Titan or Warbringer Titan for Adeptus Titanicus, it'll probably come up. So, figure I've had some decent luck recently with painting some zombies in this style, so I'm gonna do the Vince Venturella classic method of preparation, where I'm going to be mostly painting the majority of this model in either transparent paints like contrast or glazes. But before I do that, I always do a bunch of prep work, just like Vinci V teaches you to do. Do a little zenithal, do some purple from below, a little white from the top, and then take an off-white color of some sort. In this case, I'm just doing some Titan buff, which is kind of like an ivory. And just give that a good little slap on there. Pick out all the high points, give it a little bit more zenithal, and add in a little bit of color differentiation between just the grays and everything else, so you have some slightly different color on the highlights than just like pure white. Hopefully that warmth will then show through when I'm doing the colors, because many of the colors are going to be relatively cold. I still think they will be. But this is also partially just to get a little extra texture on there. Yeah, no worries. I've been, for Titanicus, I've been running Legio Solaria, or at least preparing to run Legio Solaria, so vast majority of the models I've been using have all been Warhounds, and so the Nemesis is the first thing that I've done. Come on, get off there. The Nemesis is the first like bigger, harder hitting Titan that I've done, which works out great because it does have a there is a way to specifically use Warhounds as spotters for the Nemesis's bigger guns. Okay, dry brush just going all over, being careful not to do it too much in the areas where I don't want extra light to hit, but using it to accentuate some of the areas that may not have gotten hit by the zenithal. And getting all the edges of these areas a little bit harder because I want texture down there on the bottom. Further going, further going. Okay. It's probably just about there. Can't forget the feet. Can't forget the absolute hem, so let's do a little more. Just a little. Just a little. There we go. It's a little bit better. I really dig these miniatures that they came out with. These are from Heresy Labs, I think is the company. Did a Kickstarter not too long ago for, I think it was called Citizens of the Old World. It was very clearly a line intended for people to play with Mordheim. But I liked the way that they went about doing the undead warband because there are a large number of zombies in it, but all of the zombie models that they did are actually zombified versions of civilian models that they had released previously. So you don't have just a bunch of random zombie models like you might get out of a GW kit or something similar. It's like one of your buddies may have previously bought one of their other Kickstarters and might have the Town Crier, might have the Bar Wench, might have the Bar Maid, might have the Butcher or the Landsknecht or something like that, and then you then bring out, as they die off, zombified versions of the exact same models. Very well detailed, on top of everything else, very characterful. I didn't notice it at first in the renders, but she is she had cats, and now the cats are actually on her. That's what the little thing is on her back. That's what the little thing is peeking out from underneath of her skirts on the bottom there. She's got two cats just tearing chunks off of her. Very gruesome, but hey, I like the kitties, so good to see they're still getting well fed even in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Okay, so I had recently been working with spooky kits. One of them's probably going to be black, and one of them I think I'll do in calico. Um, Recently, I tried I rarely do this, but I kind of just straight used the recipe that Vince Venturella had for his speed painting method for making zombies, and it worked out pretty dang good. And it's very simple. I really like the way that the skin came out. It gives me very heavy, like Game of Thrones White Walker vibes, insofar as they just look very leathery, very dead, and if not necessarily starting to decompose, just like dirty. Especially like with these ones. These ones are ones that I had. I tried that out on from the Cursed City box. But these ones are all very clearly supposed to have been buried because they've got their coffins on their back. But the skin tones, with just a handful of washes and a little bit of highlighting, not anything particularly complex, I was pretty surprised at how they came out. So I'm going to do a slightly altered version of that exact same method for these guys. So I figure I'll start with the flesh because that's the part that is generally inside everything else and is very easy to replicate if I need to. If I accidentally splatter something else all over it, so gotta give it the good shake. Gotta give it the good shake. Okay. Did the Xanathol and everything, did the dry brush. First step is going to be hitting her with a little Reichland Flesh Shade, or appropriate brown wash of any other. Whoops, that's the wrong one. That's the metal cup. That's the standard cup. There we go. Okay, flesh wash. Going on. Put some on, wick it off, and then put some more on. Call that good and see how this does. Alright. That hand looks like it's mostly skeleton, but I'm going to still make it look like there's a little bit of skin hanging on, so all over that hand. Give her a nice wash. She's a zombie, she's dirty, she needs to be washed, so on and so forth. For various reasons. Do this one here. A lot of this might be covered up in gore later on, but doesn't really matter. Kind of helps sell the effect to have multiple layers to it sometimes. Looks like I'm going to need more of that, potentially. I am going to get some more as I go into the face, though. Okay. All into the face, all into all of them crevices. She's got a lot of holes in her face, she's got a lot of crevices. Get that all over, into the eye socket and everything too, and underneath, can't forget the chin. Okay. That looks about good for that part of her head. There's some parts where her skin, I think, is exposed underneath of the hair. And I can always go back and repaint, restitch in the highlights on the hair later on, so I'm just going to act like these are. That's a brain on top, so that's probably skull down below, so I'm just going to leave that be. Those cats are getting brain. That's actually kind of funny. How often do you actually see a zombie who's having their brain be eaten? Oh, feet. Can't forget the feet. Little feetsies. They're nice and desiccated. Very hollow. Very Dark Souls. It's not Dark Souls if you don't look like a piece of jerky. Okay. A little more on that arm as well. Just because it was a little bit light the first time around. Alright, I'll let that sit. I think I will do... What do I want to do for the dress? I didn't even think that one through, honestly. What color should that be? Should I go with purple? She's already got some purple shading underneath. I could go with blue. Or greens. I do like a nice green, like a velvet, on a dress like that. Does look like she's got a shirt and an underside thing. Like her skirt and her shirt are two different parts, so that definitely does look dress-like on the shirt, though, not like a leather jerkin or something. So maybe I'll go with. I don't want to do just a gray skirt because that seems a little too boring. But while that flesh dries, I'm going to hydrate a little bit. I doubt we'll get enough people in here to actually start throwing the goob to make me hydrate, but you know what? I might as well try to be a responsible adult. Hmm. That is a puzzler. Wonder how she'd look with a red, like a relatively saturated red skirt with a grayish shirt on top, like a charcoal shirt. Hmm. Let me start looking at my paints. What I could actually do this out of. You know what? Brown is never a bad idea. Just because it's fantasy, fantastical. Maybe it's sort of a darker red brown, something like the Cygor. I have done the yellow before and it worked out okay. No, I can't get away from it. I think I'm gonna go with the green. Whoa! Please stay there, whiskey. Do not fall. You're a little expensive. Not all that expensive, but enough that I don't want to just slosh it everywhere. Okay. Give that a good shake, real good shake. Because these contrast paints, man, do they like to settle. Nothing in chat, nothing in chat. Okay. Out of curiosity, where in the world are you all from? I'm always curious when things like this go this late at night, how many people are actually from somewhere else in the world, as opposed to smack dab in the middle of the United States where it's rapidly approaching morning time for most people, if not already. Ugh. Okay, on the brush, off the brush, on the brush, off the brush. I'm just going to take this to make it a heavy glaze. Oh, tired German. Ah, I didn't actually read the whole thing before. I'm sorry. Or I think I mixed up the R and the I, so I read it as something like Trigermain. Not that I think that's actually a word, just that that's my brain just assumed it must be. Okay. Let's go with a little bit of green. Not really intentional, but could be a small reminder of the, what was it, it was a Genevieve novel, Beasts in Velvet. It's an old Warhammer fantasy novel. That one actually, I think, hardly even contained Genevieve. It was just kind of in the same thing because it was a pseudo-supernatural horror. People thought that there was a beast roaming around in Altdorf, but it turned out to be a nobleman, and the Velvet was a reference to the fact that most of the noblemen on some particular council, I can't remember which one, all wore green robes as a sign of office, and they kept on finding little things like scraps of green robe. At the crime scenes, they assumed it was an animal, but nope. Just some crazed aristocrat with some very wicked knives, if I recall correctly, or claws, like mechanical claws. If nothing else, a lot of the old world literature was excellent for just campy vampire and supernatural horror stories. Regardless of what you may think of the politicking and the faction-based stuff from other later entries. It's always good vampire smut. Oh, it's a little streaky, but that's okay. I'll make it work and give it a little more texture later on. Just trying to do the glazing with the contrast paints right now, which is easier with some than others. This one's also starting to get old, so this pot of paint, I mean. So it could be drying out a little bit, getting a little bit streaky. Still workable though. Just gotta know how to work with it. Okay, back to her. Main key with contrast paint, if you ever use it, you gotta make sure that you don't let an area dry without stitching in the connection. It has wonderful self-leveling properties, but it will do the coffee stain thing very, very quickly, practically instantaneously, if you try to apply some next to and over an area where you've already applied it and it's dried completely. But if you can manage to get it while it's still wet and put your last little dab in there right next to it to join the lines, then it usually forms together pretty seamlessly. So the lesson there is, if you're ever using it, make absolutely certain that you're working in sections. Don't try to like go over the whole thing all at once. Just take a small section and start it and go forward, and then pick a point and stop at that point and go back to make sure that you fill out everything in that section up to that point. Otherwise, you might wind up with awkward transitions where there's just suddenly a very clear line, or a splotch where there's a much darker section where the two sections combined. Gotta get that under. I wonder if this is supposed to be, I don't really know dresses all that well. I wonder if this cloth that's underneath it here is just supposed to be a second layer of the same cloth and dress, or if this is like some sort of slip or shift underneath of it, like a nightgown sort of thing. I've heard these words before. I don't know how they're used. That Militarum green does work extremely well for doing like military style olive drab on miniatures quickly, but I really find that it makes an excellent color for green velvet and similar green cloths. Okay. I think that's about good for the dress for the time being. Let me just get these edges here so they don't stay gray. Tilt her back up to get a look at it. I'll be doing a second layer later on after I stitch in some textured highlights. So for the time being, just getting the base color on there and having a little bit of definition is a-okay. That's plenty. And I'll let it dry, do its full curing process as I do her second wash on her skin. Go back to that smaller Fugazi. So now done the Reikland flesh shade on the skin, which is a nice warm, life-full red tone. So after you do some red, when you want to be a zombie, it looks like it's full of blood, it looks like it's full of life. That means you need to kill it. And how do you kill red? You kill red by desaturating it and bringing it closer to gray. And the way you desaturate red is, at least typically, greens. So I'm going to dip me in here a little bit of that Athonian camo shade. I'm going to try not to let it pool too much, but I'm just going to put it straight over the skin that I already established. Pooling's kind of okay on the fingers because they're naturally going to do that. There's no way around that. That's kind of appropriate, but for the rest of it, I'm mostly just going to try to glaze after a fashion. Okay. A little heavier on that. There we go. That's more what I'm looking for. Full color, full staining, and then I'll pick up the stuff that's pooling a little bit later on once I've emptied out the brush a little bit more. Get this one arm over here. Then now onto the face. Whole face, cover it in that Inksomnia camo shade. I really do think that Vince kind of nailed it. This is like the money shot of the skin. Adding that green in there to get that sort of sickly desaturation is a phenomenal technique to just take anything that looks even vaguely skin-like and just go, this is undead now. I've seen some people use other similar techniques, but the ease of just being able to use two different washes really helps out quite a lot. I'll probably have to, because I went for a more of a glaze than a heavy wash on most of it, I'm probably going to have to go back and do a second set, I think, on the second set with Inksomnia camo shade on most of the parts, just because it's not quite to the extent of what I'd like for it at the moment. Oh, I gotta do the back of her head also, in between the strands of hair where I think it's supposed to be regular skin. There we go. Sick. All right. Now the shirt. That one's still kind of giving me. I don't know what I want to do with the shirt. I keep looking at it going, I feel like it should be blue with that shape, but I'm not doing the blue on top of that green. So, I don't feel like doing a red either. I could. I don't want to do a deeper green. I suppose I could just do gray. Or a tan kind of khaki color. That might be nice on this. Well, the nice thing with doing something and then thinking that you might do gray is you can always just, if it doesn't work out, redo it later on. You know what? No, I think I will just do like a. Let me see. Whoa, shit. Oh, that's what that was. Oh, I'm being raided. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to actually remember what those sounds are. I thought that I just like dragged something, but no, that was the fart sound indicating that I'm being raided. Thank you for raiding. Let me get my thing back on to track it. There we go. Just rated the channel with 2 viewers. Well, thank you for joining. Ghost Raider. Here, let me get back to this. You know what? Let's go with the color of wine. Please, please man the cannons. Yes. Yeah, wine color. Caribou Crimson, I think on its own would probably be not too bad. I think there was it's a purple. Could start with a purple and lead up to red, I suppose. So, I am going to experiment here. Huh. Well, I don't have any ghosts on here right now because I'm working on zombies. I do have a couple of spooky, scary skeletons, though, if I just reach over here. Very, very dusty, very, very rusty. Get a different style looking one. There you go. Not quite ghosty, but closest you're gonna get. Spooky, scary skeletons. Almost 10 of them somewhere around here. Yeah, I can always glaze this with magenta later on. Oh, wait a minute, I have a magenta right there. Or like a dark one. How does this look when I take it and glaze it? Haven't tried that in quite some time. Yeah. Ghost skeleton. Practically. Skeleton? What? What? Let me get a little bit of the purple lake. And we're going to mix that in as well, I think. And see what happens, because I know that glaze is nice. Over top of a couple of things. Let me get my mixing brush here. That is not my mixing brush, is it? It's got metal in it. Ah, well. You are now my mixing brush. And we mix. Yeah, it's getting there. Wish I had a deeper red ink, but this'll do, I think. I might mix in a little bit of, actually, this will probably be just about perfect if I just start with it. So, there's some water on the thing. Remember when you're doing your glazes, always wick off your water. Or always wick it off in some water. Okay, how do you work? Not sure I'm digging the way that that's actually moving around. Let me take that off really quick, at least most of it. And I'm going to add a little medium. I don't have any glazed medium right here, but I do have this new set of Army Painter speed paints that does have some speed paint medium, which all I'm really looking for is to thicken up a little. Come on. Sorry if that was unbearably awful in your speakers, but there we go. Medium. Let's do 2 drops, see what happens. It's doing it again. I forgot about that. I've been having problems when I leave my if I leave my parchment paper on the palette for too long, it will, when I go to mix things, it'll start to kind of pull up a little bit in a weird way. Okay, now let's see what happens. That's quite a lot better. More control. So, let me just do that all over the whole thing. I think I'll actually just go deep with that. And wick off a little there. Here. Yeah, that makes a nice little contrast paint. Just got to make sure to pull the pools around where I actually want them. I'm definitely going to need to do a couple different layers on this because this is not the final color that I want, but it should be a good starting point. Yeah, this will need to be quite a bit darker once I'm finished with it. I'll get there though. Hello there. Oh shit, that reminds me, I need to go watch that Obi-Wan series at some point. Okay. Going to go back into the paint, get a little more, wick off a tiny bit. Gotta get the whole thing covered in this so it all levels out. Alright. 1 second, I see the chat's moving, but I gotta finish this little bit so I can look away. Almost done here. Okay. Oh, you got a bot? Oh, good catch. Thank you. Yeah, right as I had to look away. Sorry about that. Thank you for catching that, though, Swish. He is like a leaf on the wind. It's the BPL, you know, we're big, we're important, we're big stuff. Hot stuff, big business going through this Twitch channel, I'm sure. We are the new game in town and everybody wants a piece. Cue the box sounds. Oh, that kind of looks like garbage as far as the color combination goes at the moment, but if I do several coats of that, or if I at least just bring it down with a little bit of red, like some whole red or something like that, I'll be able to get kind of more of a deeper wine color, and that's what I'd like to go for. Bloody wine-ish color. Okay, now that it's drying, that flesh looks pretty damn good. It got very, very green, which is just about appropriate. So, I think that's fine to keep where it is. So now, I'm going to move on to the next step with the flashes. Yeah, the bonk stonks. You got to get in quickly. The bonk stonks are just going up. Up and up and up. Excuse me while I hydrate. And then while I dehydrate. Oh, that is excellent. Grab a nightcap if you don't have one already. If you feel in the mood. And now I rehydrate again. That Mr. Black is good stuff, but it does dry your mouth out pretty quickly because you get a little bit of coffee and you get a little bit of grain alcohol. So, it works. It is delicious, but I gotta keep on top of that hydration. Okay, next step. We are going for Parallax's personal favorite contrast paint of all time, Magos Purple. Gotta give that shit a good shake. I do remember tuning in one time where Parallax was complaining about a couple of different things with the contrast paints, and that is the big complaint that most people have, and I do to an extent, is that there's people perceive it as there being poor consistency in the range. And dictionary definition, yes, that is true, but it's only if you're actually trying to. That only matters if you're actually trying to use them as they advertise them as one to be used. You know, like the whole one thick coat thing. Some of these ones that are practically transparent in some cases are great for very, very specific uses, like this. Take a little Magos Purple, find the places where where blood would pool. You just put it right on there. It's a very nice light tint that only really shows up for the most part inside the crevices. Not entirely. It will tint everything, but it doesn't turn everything purple. It just kind of provides a purple hue that collects mostly in the recesses. So you go to things like the joints between the fingers. Oh, yeah, Super Chief. This is a zombie model from the Heresy Labs Kickstarter. I think the Kickstarter was called with Witchfire and Sword or something like that. But I bought a bunch of STLs, but specifically I bought the Undead Warband in resin. So I got the Undead Warband, which is I appreciate the fact that it is actually like all the zombies are zombie versions of the miniatures that they had made for their previous old world Kickstarter, which was citizens of the old world. So they had a whole collection of citizens, like the town crier, a sister of Sigmar, a butcher, a this is like I think just a she might be a merchant, she might be a tavern girl. There's also a tavern like a barmaid in there, but they made zombie versions of all of them. So she's just a normal citizen, but she's the zombie version of it. So if your friends have the citizens and they're using them for different things, it can be fun to bring the zombified version of it. Not really. I mean, kind of Warhammer, but also kind of not, if you want to call it that. Yeah, it's for Mordheim. I play Mordheim on occasion with some of my friends. One in particular, but yeah, Mordheim's been out of production for quite a while. So no, not modern Warhammer by any means. That's a little bit much. Let me take some of that out. And not modern Warhammer. I do play several different things of modern Warhammer, predominantly Warcry, and a um, small bit of Warhammer 40k stuff on occasion. I've got armies for just about everything. Um, Not all the way back to like really really old school. Like I don't have any. I don't have any Man of War, and I don't have any War Master. Um, I don't have any stuff actually made for several game systems like Epic, but I do have miniatures that would work for it. Like, oh, where'd those go? Are those all the way on top? Yeah, they are. I'm not going to bother grabbing them. I've got one of my friends that got me into Adeptus Titanicus started wanting to do Epic style Titanicus with infantry and tanks and things, so he took my Solar Auxilia army that I have for 30k and printed all of it, but in like 6mm scale. They're actually kind of cute. Their hands at that scale, they can't model fingers and have them print correctly, so instead they model their hands like little mittens. It's really adorable. Yeah, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and Dark Heresy, absolutely. That's some of my favorite stuff with Warhammer stuff has nothing to do. I do enjoy army building, but even within the army building, the best part about it to me is always when you get to characters and you get to convert and paint exactly how you want to, which opens you up in some cases to breaking some of the normal rules and just doing stuff for the rule of cool. So doing things like that where you're doing RPG characters, bingo bango. That's pretty much exactly what you're doing in those cases. Okay. Going back to Magos Purple again so I can get the last little bit onto her face. And again, like I said, this is something that I'm just doing to indicate places where blood would have pooled, because these zombies may still be relatively fresh, for one, but also just like it gives you the impression that when people die, they turn purple essentially because the blood starts to pool in certain areas. So you pick all the places where they would have quite a lot of blood would wind up at, and you put that Magos Purple on there. It's not a good color if you're intending to use it for the whole one thick coat thing, but it is a good color if you're just trying to use it to tint things. So I'm going to put it kind of like inside and around the outside of the mouth, on the cheeks, in the eye sockets especially. But I'm not going to put it on the forehead or on like the bottom area of the cheeks or anything like that. Just kind of up in the area to give a little bit more color definition. And it'll come out looking, to us, it'll look more like it's bruised than anything, hopefully. By Battletech? Yeah. So, the E-Ghost. If I ever wanted to paint minis, what would be a good place to get them? I've only ever bought one of those 40k starter boxes. So, that is all over the place, especially right now with supply issues are still going on for a lot of people, and it also just comes down to what kind of miniatures you want. So, like, if you're talking about Warhammer Fantasy or Dark Heresy, you're not talking about wanting to buy an entire army box. This is not the easiest thing to do, but when you want character models, it's becoming more and more common that someone in your own community that you may not realize, but it's very likely that someone in your community does 3D printing like resin 3D printing, high quality. Um, like these miniatures are also like they're resin casts of 3D printed models. So when you look at that, and I tell you that's a 3D printed model as far as like the quality that you can get out of it, it's out there, and some people can get pretty damn close to this even with just like the home printers. So for individual character models, you might be able to you can a lot of people who have 3D printers, if you just provide them with the STL file or whatever the appropriate file is, they'll happily print it for you for a very small fee, basically just to cover their labor and costs. So there's a lot of really cool character models out there that you could potentially buy the STL file for just like a couple bucks, or get them in a pack where it's like you pay $10 or $15 and then have 30 or 40 STL files, and then pay someone like $5 to print it for you. Outside of that, if you're actually looking for Games Workshop models, well, for one, you can order them online. I don't really know where to order them. Aside from ordering them straight from Games Workshop, I don't know many retailers to order them from, because I've got a friendly local gaming store that I go to for all of my gaming stuff, and they give pretty deep discounts just because that's their business model, is just taking a higher discount to get more profit in the end by having people buy more stuff and developing a good customer relationship. Outside of that, there are many other miniature manufacturers out there, especially ones that make display miniatures or miniatures made for skirmish war games. You'll find when you look into skirmish war game miniatures, they will often be much higher detail and much more dynamic than like army-based games. And keep in mind, when I say skirmish-based war games, I'm talking about like things where your whole force is like 10 to 15 models maximum, if not less. Like in modern parlance, that would be for Games Workshop, that would be Kill Team, Necromunda, or Warcry. Um, so each one of those is like you're probably only going to have 5 to 10 miniatures. Each one of those boxes, then in the skirmish-based games, they usually the poses are much more dynamic. The characters are much more characterful, and some of them will have extra options, so you can choose a handful of different ways to outfit them. So that might be a good way to get really cool models that isn't paying a whole bunch of extra money to buy character models like with 40K, where a single Imperial Guard commissar might be like $35 for the one model because it's a character model, whereas 10 models that are equally character full in a kill team might be like $50 for the box of 10 or something like that, or 60 or 70, I don't know. But outside of that, there's plenty of other miniature manufacturers out there. If you wanted character miniatures, one of my favorite go-tos is it's called Hassle Free Miniatures. It's a UK-based company, small company, family owned, I think, and they do very good work for very good prices. The go-to in the United States, and also the go-to for the cheapest kind of character models you can get, is if you go look at Reaper. You can order Reaper miniatures online, including the cheapest line that they have, I believe, is the Reaper Bones line, which is like it's made out of almost like a rubbery plastic. It's a very low quality material, but their models are like character models that you can buy for like $2. So if you just want stuff to practice on, or you're just trying to get a handful of really neat models for things like that, Reaper's not a bad place to go. There's more out there, but I can't remember them all off the top of my head. So you can probably find plenty of them if you go looking on YouTube. If you just kind of look for miniature painting YouTube channels and see if you can find some videos where they're talking about their own favorite miniatures lines and so on and so forth, that's not a bad place to go. So if you have more specific questions about like specific kinds of miniatures, then let me know, and I might have other things pop into my head. But anyways, tirade over. Back to the painting. I am going to at least add another coat of this purple just to deepen everything down, because I really don't like looking at that very light, very splotchy purple that I had on there from the first coat. Come on, now I can get the whole thing. There we go. This might be a bit of a pain to deal with the amount of pooling that I've got going later on, but I will deal with that later on. It'll all work out fine. I'm not certainly not planning on painting this entire miniature start to finish tonight. I just wanted to at least get a good start on it and have some fun digging around figuring out exactly how Twitch works. Oh, hey Cookie Mama. Sorry, I didn't even notice that. I'm looking over at my tablet and I've got it in some little carrier thing, and there's a little rod that blocks off like one specific line from my view if I don't move my head around the other way. So I didn't even notice your message because it was back behind that. Sorry about that. You're one of the only other people in the BPL that I've seen that regularly wants to stream this late at night. Okay, that is probably good enough for that coat. Actually, let me just get a little bit more up in there and then down along here. Okay, I'll let that sit for a bit. Osprey games, yes. The thing that's nice with Osprey, they're certainly not the highest detail kits on the market by a wide margin. They're pretty bland if you're talking about, not really bland. Bland is the wrong word, but just like their kits are perfect for what they're intended to be. That being, you're supposed to play games like Frostgrave and Stargrave, like you were saying, where you assemble your own warbands. But they're supposed to be generic things to where you have enough pieces to assemble a warband appropriate for 15 or 20 different styles of warband, and so on and so forth. And every model is kind of treated like a character model, so you're expected that you'll do some kit bashing and things like that. But because of the nature of it, they're trying to make it like just a very generic and all-encompassing kit. You don't have much in the way of like dynamic poses or tons and tons and tons of variety in different styles. Most everybody's warbands, you're going to be able to still look at them and go like, oh yeah, that's the generic kit number one, that's the generic kit number two, so on and so forth. Um, but the fact that you can make pretty much everything is its own. That's its own boon. It actually is very nice. Oh, that's right. Summertime, you're actually available during this time. That makes more sense now that I think about it. Yeah, Steel Warrior, definitely. Steel Warrior is a wonderful company from what I've seen. I bought a couple of shirts from them also. But they mostly make BattleTech stuff. But they do have some other non-BattleTech stuff. But their BattleTech stuff is pretty top notch. I have a lot of their STL files for making terrain. Okay. Okay, that Magos Purple now has finished drying. So if you take a closer look at the face and at the hand, you can kind of see what I'm talking about, where it's like, I can't actually tell like how clear that is for you guys, but to me, when I look at it, it's like it kind of gives this nice little, just a very small line where it almost looks bruised because all of the blood pooled in certain areas. I'm actually going to hit a little bit more, just a teeny bit more inside the eye socket. Yeah, the goal with that, again, is just to make it to where you can visually see the areas where the blood should have pooled on someone after they died. Just do a little bit more inside the outer area of the hands, because that'll be same thing there, not so much in the fingers, but definitely in the wrist area, joints and things like that. Same thing here. Let me heavily get the joint of the ankle. There we go. Yeah, Thunderhead does some phenomenal. You're talking about Thunderhead Studios If so, yeah, oh, I love his stuff. Both the stuff that he creates, like the 3D models, and also the painting that he does is just, it's phenomenal. I really enjoy it. Not necessarily like, it's not something that most of the stuff he paints is not like a Golden Demon winner, but it's not trying to be. It's a very, very, very high quality tabletop standard for him. And it's very stylistic, and that's the thing that I really appreciate about it. It catches the eye extremely well. I would love to see him do something in a competition like Golden Demon style or Crystal Brush or something like that. Okay. So now to represent the places where there's actually some uh, some open wounds and things like that. That's where I go to Carberg Crimson. And I'm also going to really quick do that. Yeah, let me see. I wanted to see how some of these Army Painter speed paints are. I just picked them up a couple of days ago because I figured even if they're not really that much better or worse than contrast paints, at least they're quite a bit cheaper. So this is the, what is this, Purple Alchemy? Yeah, so this is probably their riff on Magos Purple. I'm going to put that inside the brain pan. What's he building? Are you talking about what Thunderhead's building, or are you talking about like what I'm painting right now? Okay. Get that all inside the area where the brain is. And then I'm going to use a little more pink. A lighter pink, and I'll highlight those little brain wrinkles a little bit later on. Yes, it do indeed be a zomboid. This is a zombie for Mordheim. Got a whole warband of undead that I'm just slowly gonna make my way through. Yep, now that I've done that, I do feel like I should have made her top be blue. Oh well. Missed opportunity, but I'll deal with it later. I'll run with the purple and I'll make someone else's blue. Okay. Out of curiosity for you guys, because I mostly just see the OBS, so I kind of see like the raw look. How is the actual quality? Like, are you guys able to see this in full screen and pick out details and things? Like, if I point to things and say, "Look at that Brucey blush look on it," can you actually see what I'm talking about, or is it mostly just kind of mostly a little too pixelated to pick out details? Okay, Caribou Crimson. Go into this. Yeah, the lighting is something I can't really help. It's an exposure thing. Because if I get this up too high, my ring light is like right here. I'm pointing at it. And so you can see that with my hands. When I get them up close to it, the ring light, I have to have it lighting this whole area and have to have the miniature being lit basically as much as it's being lit, just so I can see what's going on. If I go any further away, I don't have the lighting that I need to actually observe it very well. But with that light being as close as it is, it's like as soon as something gets close to it, it blows out the exposure. So I have to have the exposure relatively low, which means that everything else around here is going to be a lot darker than it might seem like it's supposed to be. Unless you're just talking about the candles. The candles are just, I don't know, I just felt like I wanted to be chill. Okay, small. Small as in like it would be better if the miniature were closer to the camera like this, but actually in focus. Because I can actually do that. I just have to remember to actually hold the mini up there. Let me see. Let me move this up to like 45 or so on the. There you go. That's about right for it being like 3 inches away from the camera. But as soon as I get it down to like working distance, it's a little bit hard. I'm gonna leave it at about, yeah, about there. I'll try to work a little bit higher. Okay. So, yeah, the Caribou Crimson. There's not a ton of holes in her, really. Mostly just things like where the cat is, where the cats are starting to eat away at her skin. So, let me just do a little bit of that. Caribou Crimson going in. So, hit the area on her foot where there's a cat chewing on her. A little bit much, but I'm okay with that. Hit this whole area here. Try to make sure that I put some into any pock marks and holes that I see. Definitely going to go right into that nose and into the mouth and into that eye socket that's missing an eye. And might as well get the area kind of like just around it to represent the trauma. And then the cat is, oh god, it's got a whole flap of skin down there. So there's some, let me get a little more Caribou Crimson. And I'll get that whole area here with those little pieces, and then get that little piece of jerky he's pulling off right there. Just so I've got that indicated for later that I need to glorify all of that. And then everything else in there I think is skull. Skull is what I'm trying to say. Oh, right, the cat. So I'm going to need to paint the cats and do the caribou and whatnot inside of them, but I'll get there when I get there. For the time being, that skin is not bad. So, after the Caribou Crimson, clothes, and then we go into the Pale Sand. So in this case, it's going to wind up being the Titan buff I put down earlier, which is the time where I would pick out details. So before I do that, I'm going to start with the cats. So the one that's up top is going to be a black cat. Let's see what this black knockoff contrast paint does. Be very interested to see that, because if I fuck it up, it's easy enough for me to just go and repaint the cat gray and start all over again with it in just 1 or 2 steps. Maybe. There we go. That's about right. Okay. Teeny little bit of black, maybe one more drop. Maybe just a little bit. A little bit for me, a little bit for Santa, a little bit for the reindeer. A little more for Santa. Okay. Black Army Painter Speed Paint. Straight onto a cat. What do you do? How much does it pool? How much does it run? What are we looking at here as far as overall workability goes? Is it going to be grainy when it ends? Just try to get everything covered in a nice easy coat. Try to get it to move down with the paintbrush so that it doesn't pool too much. I never really use the black contrast paint because it just doesn't really end looking the way that I really want it in most cases. And I get the feeling that's going to be the same with this, but we'll see what happens once it finishes drying. That can have quite an effect on it. And then I'll just, for good measure, do the inside the ribs also, because that's going to be relatively dark blood, I think. Okay, so now I'll just leave that. That looks like it's going to turn out, honestly, kind of grainy. No different than if I'd done an extremely heavy wash on it. Let me just get some of this pooling out, especially the one that's up on the top of the head by the ears. But it'll look like a nice little black kitten, I think. I can darken it down further and do a handful of other things. Once I actually do some highlighting on it, I think it'll be alright. Get that right there. Out of that. Too much pooling inside of divots. That looks like it might be actually a wound on the cat, so I'll have to remember to gore that later on. So I'll let that dry and maybe I'll go put a second coat on and see how it comes out. Honestly, I might next time just do a black ink instead, because at least it'll go out a little bit smoother. The one down below, though, I was thinking about doing a calico kind of color. Just gotta remember what calico cats actually look like. That said, he's actually got fur texture on him, which is kind of cute. I think as a base thing for him, I'm just gonna take some dark gray wash. Where'd I put that? Is that it right there? Or is that the black? That is Crioscuro. There we go. So yeah, the one on the bottom, just because I want him to be a little bit of a darker gray, I'll take a dark gray wash, apply it over the whole cat face. Shouldn't discolor it quite as much as that black speed paint did on the top one. Yeah, here we go. Just add a little definition into the strands also of fur. Oh, gotta remember to actually pick it up a little bit. Okay. That's probably okay for the cat. Now the question is, what color should I do her hair also? Let me know if you have suggestions. Looks like the cat up top is pretty much dry. Just a little bit more to dry on the inside of the ribs, so I'll let him continue drying. And in the meantime, I'll start doing the detail work on... there we go, that's my 0. Raphael 8404. Personal favorite. Yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of this ivory color, this Titan buff from Golden. Apply it where appropriate, so that means the eyeball first. This is going to be one of those like moments as I try as best I can to, there we go, just that little dot on the eyeball, so you got a little bit of definition in there for when I go put some I'll probably color that blue, because I watch Game of Thrones and I'm original. I can think for myself. Give it that nice White Walker glow. And just start putting coats down on the exposed bone. Ivory color works great for bone, as you might expect with a when you call it ivory. Let's see. Oh, I think... Is that not... Oh. Shit, the chat's been going. Didn't even realize it. Oh, hey, Thunderclap. Oh, shit. Liking the speed paints. So first off, Thunderclap, am I super quiet as in, like, I'm just talking quiet, or is it like my mic is way too low? Because I do have my myself set for maximum volume, and when I listen to it on, if I turn my volume all the way up, like when I'm listening to the stream, my voice sounds pretty much exactly what I would hope for someone's voice to sound like in this sort of thing. But I can't tell if you mean like I just need to move my mic closer to my face or something else, or if you just meant that I was mumbling. The speed paints I haven't hardly used at all yet. This is literally the first time I've touched them. They oh wow. They do seem to behave a little bit differently than contrast in some ways. I thought the little black cat up top was gonna look like kind of looked like garbage because it looked like it was very spotty, like there were a bunch of little dots all over it, like it was kind of grainy, and then it seems like um, it seems like it just kind of smoothed itself out. Now that looks like that's a pretty acceptable black for a base coat, so I'm not mad at that. The only other speed paint I've used so far is just the I used some of their Magos purple alternative. I think it's like purple alchemy in the brain, and just slap that on there. Looks like it's basically the same color as Magos purple, but with living up to the reputation that I've heard so far of they seem to have more even coverage than contrast paints, which I kind of love contrast paints for the fact that they don't have even coverage, because it's nice to have ones that I can do like with Magos purple, like I was doing earlier, where I can add it and why does this not refresh? Sorry, I've got a tablet that I'm watching the chat on, but I'm starting to realize that, like, for whatever reason right now, it's not like moving up and refreshing when someone posts something. So I've got to look over at my computer and go like, oh shit, that's not the same message. Anyways, I kind of like the fact that with contrast paints you have some in the line that are very thin and transparent and kind of like tint things more than they do like fully color them, and then you have other ones that are very opaque. So that's what I'm expecting, and what has, at least out of the two colors I've used so far with the speed paints, it seems like they took people's complaints about contrast paints being that way, because as though like they didn't have consistency across the range, because people were expecting them to all cover the exact same way. So it seems like speed paints have tried to address that and make it to where that doesn't happen with speed paints. That like that's kind of what I've seen when people talk about them, and it seems to be true from this little bit. Which I could be completely wrong. I'll have to actually see more of it. But yeah, people are claiming at least that they make a more even coat than contrast, with less splotchiness, less pooling in the bad ways, and just more even coats. So we'll see. We'll just get these little rib bones here. Little kitty rib bones. Cute little kitty rib bones. There we go. Yeah, it could be your speakers, but you could be right. I could just need to speak up or change my headset. I'm not really sure. I do talk very quietly, and I'm aware of that. But like I said, when I listen to the stream, it seems pretty much fine. At least as far as my own tastes goes. Okay. I'm thinking these cats' eyes are just going to be green, but I'm going to need to make something of a base for them, so I'm going to hit their eyes with a little bit of the ivory color also. Some very oddly shaped eyeballs sometimes. Come on. There's one, there's two. And now the one that's on her back. Whoop, got a little on the nose. Oh well. That'll be fine. Come on. This is where them shaky ass hands do not come in useful. There's one eye. And there is, I think, two. That's a bit much, but that'll work out fine. Get a little more ivory on the ribs of that one cat. And then she's got that one bone sticking out. Oh, teeth. Forgot about her teeth almost. ASMR. Nah, fuck that. You can't have ASMR with a lisp. Or can you? Does that make it more ASMR? Hmm. I wonder, I wonder. I do really wonder. Gotta get them chompers in there. Otherwise, she's not dangerous at all. I think she's only got two front teeth on the top of her mouth. That's actually kind of funny. Mm. Okay. Where to go next? Might as well just base coat everything. So I'm going to gonna take a little bit of ivory to draw back in the light color on the small details on her little belt thing. Because there's some areas where I've hit it with some of the contrast paints accidentally, and doing this will also give it a little bit of extra pop when I put something on top of it. Color-wise, I mean. A little bit more. There we go. Also, just as a reminder for anybody that might be watching and or listening, I've never streamed anything before outside of just occasionally, talking and chatting with friends in Discord or something like that. So, if there are any things that you can think of that are common things that are expected of a streamer, or just other faux pas or something like that that I may be committing, things that I can do better, things that you think that are things I should be doing or something similar, just let me know. I'd like to be able to improve on this. Anything that I do like this, I generally try to do it. You know, if I'm not gonna, even if I'm not gonna do it like professionally as a job, I at least like to act like a professional when I can. Not that that's expected. Like this is this is the WBPL. The point is to not be professionals and still have fun, for the most part. But I just like to try to provide a nice, easy, chill experience. So I'm here for you guys, not the other way around. So she can whistle. Yes, theoretically, I guess she can. Hmm. A lot of ASM artists use a lot of S sort of sounds, so lisp can be okay. If they use a lot of S sounds, though, wouldn't that make the lisp being having a lisp even worse? Because now you're just bombarding people with your lisp with the S all the time. They call her the whole puncher. Jesus Christ. Yeah. I don't. Can you not just whistle with your lips when you don't have teeth in your top gums? I've never actually ran into that before. Or even if you can't you do the thing where you put your fingers in your mouth and still whistle? I thought you really only just had to have a tongue and lips. Oh God, please, someone clip that. Holy shit. If that doesn't get taken out of context at some point in the future, I'm going to be so sad. Fix that little bit of ivory that I accidentally dropped in there. Alright, next step. Now that I've done that, the belt and whatnot, Athonian came into that. I think came on the pale sand. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is, while that dries, I think I'm going to predominantly focus on the skin for the time being. So what I'm going to do is take some of this Titan buff that I had from earlier, and it might be a little bit too thin to do this now, but I'm going to see if I can make it work. little bit of Titan buff off to the side, and then you mix in a little Athonian camo shade, just like earlier, because that's what you want to do. If you want to have dead flesh, you need to kill it. Red in flesh typically indicates life, because that's blood. Or, like the rush of blood, the movement of the blood. So, if you want to kill the color of flesh, you want to add either green or blue to it. Blues and purples will make it look like it's cold, like it's run out of warmth. So that will make it look like it's somewhat dead. But additionally, taking out the red and turning it closer to gray will also make something look kind of corpse-like. So, like I said, all I did here was just mix in a little bit of Athenian camo shade into the Titan buff color that I was using, and I'm just going to wick off some from my brush, because this is going to be a highlight, but I don't want to just like jump immediately to it, so I'm going to use it kind of like as a glaze. And this is predominantly going to wind up like this will negate a lot of the red that I put into it earlier on with the Magos purple and whatnot, so I just need to be sure to not completely cover up the areas where I had put that and intended for it to be very, very visible. And just keep on going with it. And that can strike down there to the knuckle. And then to the knuckle here. Okay, let me catch up on chat. Zombies don't whistle, they death rattle. No, the skeletons rattle. That's the that's the D&D language to speak with skeletons, is skeleton rattle or is death rattle. I do like the idea, though, of skeletons actually communicating with each other using like very complicated hand signals that also include forms of rattling and banging, like they can make knocking sounds on themselves. Oh, look at that, a clip. What is this clip? Let's find out. Okay, yeah, that ain't bad. Thank you, Cookie Mama. I hope to find a use for that in the future. Okay, back to the highlighting. Tiny bits at a time. Just taking it nice and easy. Okay, this is a little bit too thin, so I'm going to just get a drop of the flesh, or of the fresh thing. Yep. Some skeletons aren't enemies, some skeletons are friends. They like to talk. I once played in an evil guy campaign of D&D 3.5 where the initial party essentially kind of took over a town, and there were like 3 or 4 of us left at the end of it. It was just a normal like port town sort of thing on an island, and I don't remember exactly how it wound up happening, but all of the skeletons and undead wound up not getting like they kind of got just like banished. I don't remember the exact story, but there was essentially like an undertown in the sewers just made up entirely of skeletons who were all upstanding members of society. So they just made their own little town down there with their own like markets and society and everything like that. And I remember it was very heavily implied that one of the shops was like a skeleton herbalist, and we couldn't really get the vibe at first because it was the DM was doing everything in skeleton rattle, but eventually we realized I think it was supposed to be Cheech. No, it was Chong. Yeah, it was Chong. He wound up giving us some pills that slowly increased our attributes if we continued to take them for long enough, and then after we questioned the DM about it for a while, he was like, "Oh yeah, it's just amends once a day. That's all." If you take it for long enough, it doesn't really make you that much stronger. It just prevents you from uh, feeling the effects of aging. So he basically just did that to where it would do that right around the time that our characters would get that old. A little stupid, but it just popped into my head. Fuck, what's my tablet doing? Oh, I see. Yeah, the bone healing juice, exactly. Cake Boss, what are we discussing? We are discussing coffee and alcohol, also known as coffee alcohol or coffee liqueur. No, we're not actually discussing that. I was just like, wait a minute, Cake Boss is back. Ha ha ha! I told you I was gonna give you a really boring stream. It's Mr. Black. It's a cold brew coffee liqueur with a green alcohol base. Anyways, yeah, we're discussing performance enhancing skeleton drugs. Okay, just a little bit of that on the forehead. Tiny little bit, bridge of the nose, tiny little bit right around the eye sockets. Try to lighten that all up a little. God, her nose makes her have like a pig face. Look, this is so gross. Grody! This is grody. Make sure to mark those cheeks. There we go. Oh, good night, Swish. I'll see you next time. Possibly. Well, try to enjoy your time at work, Darian. No, not necessarily mild painkillers. I don't know if it's a thing that you have over in Germany that's referred to it in the same way. We call them men's once a day because it's a multivitamin. It's just a pill that's just loaded with vitamins and nutrients that are things that you should be getting in your diet, but almost nobody is expected to be getting in their diet, or at least not enough of them, and things that you require more of as you get to old age. So, I don't think I have a bottle anywhere nearby, but they are commonly known to be like marketed towards and predominantly provided for people that are like 55 years and older. But it's just like it's a single large pill with a mixture of like calcium, zinc, iron, probably some like vitamin B, vitamin C, so on and so forth. Um, but yeah, it's just stuff that's helpful to prevent you from potentially injuring yourself by like keeping your muscles strong, keeping your bones strong, helping your joints move okay, staving off things like arthritis. Doesn't really like change the way you feel when you take it. It just makes it so that you're less likely to have those same aches and pains and problems when you get older. So, E-Man the Glee Man. Okay, going back down. Yeah, so no, I actually have never rinsed my brush in any of my drinks before. That's a common joke, and there's some great parodies and satires of that. Especially the Maniac did a whole video on paint tasting. But no, I've never done that, and part of the reason why I do that is I try to keep quite a bit of separation. Like I'm right-handed, so I stick those drinks on the right side, or on the left side. I know it's flipped on the stream, but this is my right hand. My left side is over here, so I'm never going to accidentally put my brush inside of that and rinse it off. And the other thing too is I make a point to use these actually pretty useful Citadel paint cups that I use them because I don't know if you can see it on this one maybe. Nope. They've got ridges at the bottom that when you swish your brush through it, it helps agitate the paint out of it. So I'm never generally going to mistake this for any other cup or anything like that that I have. So I've been pretty lucky with that. But yeah, I have had friends that have done that because they refuse to separate out their paint cups, and so they just use coffee mugs for everything. Let's see. Yeah, magnesium and potassium both are great to take when you first start working out. But yeah, they're essentially multivitamins, but just the men's once a day ones are just specifically multivitamins that are made with the purpose of just being like supplemental for everything in life as you get older to make it so that your aging doesn't affect you quite as much physically in a negative way. What the fuck was I doing with this? Oh, I was highlighting her skin. Jesus Christ. Okay, so let me just get this last little bit on her face. I think I'll lighten up the forehead a little bit, especially right around her brow. And then try to get a little bit more right on the edge of the nose so there's some definition there, and the eye sockets. So they're still nice and red, like they've got collected blood in them, but that you can much more clearly see from a distance, which I mean I know that you guys can't because the focus will fuck me if I try to move it away, but that way you've just got just a little bit of definition on everything that wants to be defined. Let me just get her chin too. Chin and then that gel down below, down to the below area. And then I'll leave her bottom and top lip a little bit red. I'll wind up putting some more blood affecting things in there later on. Feet. Don't really need highlighting, honestly, I don't think, but she's got some some areas where I'm just like, yeah, that could be a little bit brighter. I think are supposed to be like her toes and whatnot. These feet have a lot of texture. They kind of do come out looking like jerky. Okay. Double-walled tumbler with no E. Hmm. You dip your paintbrush into the website. Interesting. Good morning, Garver. It is late night for us here. Well, for me at least. What are we at? 11:37. Yep, that's California time. Um, yeah, the forbidden colorful coffee. It's not colorful coffee. It's Power Rangers Go Juice. Once you actually start sticking your paint in it. But yeah, oh god, you want to talk about forbidden colorful coffee? Give me 1 second, and I'll give you a coffee business, a coffee shop story. Um, Dog stole my rolled up roast beef right outside the store, and I was just like, yeah, it says roast. Yeah, that's awful. I'm sorry that dog took that. Yeah, okay, so you want to know a absolutely disgusting coffee shop story. If you, so I made the joke earlier about my name, my nickname at least, the Coffee Baron. I usually go by Yippee-I-Yo, but people call me the Coffee Baron Legion because Tex one time had the idea. He called it recursive coffee. He wanted someone to, or himself, to take like a Mr. Coffee brewer, and he was like, "What would happen if you take coffee and you brew it, and then you take the brewed coffee and you put it back into the tank instead of the water, and you brew the coffee again using coffee instead of water, and then you do that a third time? Does that become coffee cubed?" And so I successfully stopped him from attempting it by doing my own version of it using cold brew coffee. That's how I got the name. But part of the reason I got the name is because I actually, I and my family own coffee shops. We started a coffee chain a while back, and we own several of them now. So the disgusting joke of the forbidden colorful coffee is, you guys all know those the pumps, the syrup pumps, like the bottles of Tarani or Monin or Da Vinci syrups, and you pump down on it. Sorry, let me get this thing out of the way. I keep on smacking my headset. But yeah, you pump down on it, and every pump just dispenses a quarter ounce of syrup. Or if it's the big bottles of sauce, usually it'll dispense a half ounce. Well, those things over time, they're just sugar water with color and flavorings add, and they add potassium sorbate and citric acid to make it to where that they don't crystallize as much, and it preserves them over time. But that only works when it's in high concentration inside the bottle with all the rest of the liquid. So if you get it outside of the bottle, not only does it get very sticky, it will dry, and when it dries, it does crystallize. And that happens inside the pumps over time. It's kind of like if you were not to never clean it and but you kept on pumping through it. It's like it grows stalagmites and stalactites, whatever the ones are that they come down. So at the tip of the pump, and it's weird because some flavors do this more than other ones or quicker, but the tip of the pump over time will start to get this. It'll get plugged up, and then it'll start to get like a dripping down thing where it's like it's got a little spike coming out, usually kind of rounded off in the end, of crystallized syrup, flavor syrup or sugar syrup, whatever it is. So on the daily, what we'll usually do is we go and clean those out. If not on the daily, then like once a week, you go check to see which ones are getting clogged, and then you take a little one of those drink stopper things you stick in the top of a hot drink cup that looks like a little tab with a stick on the end of it. Well, those fit perfectly size-wise up on the inside of the pump thing. So if it's only partially clogged, you can just like stick that up on the inside and twist it around, and it cleans it out pretty much entirely. If it's too clogged, then you take something sharp and you knock off the edge, the like front part of it, and then you twizzle the thing up in there. But the forbidden colorful coffee thing, of why this reminded me about it, the average way that we find out which ones do or don't need to be cleaned out is you take like a 12-ounce paper cup, all right, and you go around to every single one of the syrup pumps in the shop, syrups and sauces, every flavor, every bottle. You do just a teeny little bit, like a quarter of a pump, so you get like a 16th of an ounce in there. And you do that with every single one of them, because when you do that, you can feel whether it's completely clear or if it's hard to pump and it comes out in like a sharp stream. That means you need to clean it out. So you do that with every single one of them, and you clean them as you go. But at the very end, you now have this cup that has like 40 or 50 different syrup flavors on the inside of it. All of them are radioactive colored for the most part. But once they all get mixed together, they just form this, like, it's not quite black, it's almost always a little bit purple. It's like staring into it's an elder god, sort of, like, it feels eldritch when I look in it, often because, like, if you get a pump of white chocolate in there, it'll kind of, like, make a swirl, so it looks like a vortex that you're staring into, like, just an inky, purple, white, gray, ivory vortex slowly twisting its way on the inside of the cup. And it smells like death, because you're smelling every single one of those flavors individually, but simultaneously, so it's just absolute olfactory overload. I have never tasted this, but I did catch some of my employees when very early on, like 8 years ago, had started getting into this thing where they did it like as an initiation. They started I laugh now, but at the time I was kind of livid. They start fucking with the other new employees by telling them the two things they have to do before they're allowed to make hot drinks is you have to take a shot of espresso straight without spitting it back up, and you have to take the Death Eldritch coffee, the forbidden coffee color, with a shot of espresso and every single flavor in the shop, and you have to drink that shit. So a handful of them apparently had. I feel very sorry for them. There's nothing that I can do for them now. They were fortunately lost to the void. Their willpower and their souls, or what have you, were all strong enough to resist the call of the void that was slowly swirling inside of that coffee cup. But that's still, to this day, every time I do that, I still kind of stare at it sometimes and just go like, I wonder what... No, it's... God, I gotta stop thinking about it. Jesus Christ. Let me catch back up at the chat here, huh? Let's read to burnt coffee for weeks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not quite diabetes in a cup, but it's pretty darn close. The main thing is just they all contain the same amount of sugar, so even when you're doing like 40 of them, you're still only talking about like 4 or 5 ounces of syrup, and like I don't know if you've seen people drink those double Red Bulls, like the flavored Red Bulls. I know it's kind of a California and West Coast thing. It started with Dutch Bros up in Oregon, but like people will take a Red Bull, a 16-ounce can, like the giant tall boy cans, dump it into a cup, and then add syrup to that, like flavored syrup. So you get a flavored Red Bull and then ice. But then some people will do that and blend it. And when we blend it, we add more flavor than we normally do. So normally, a single flavored Red Bull would have 4 pumps of syrup, which is about an ounce. Double flavored Red Bull would have 8 pumps, which is 2 ounces of syrup. By the time you get to the double blended Red Bull, you have a full 16-ounce can of Red Bull, which has something like 30 or something grams of sugar in it, I think, or 40. And then 12 pumps of syrup on top of that, which is a total of 3 ounces of syrup. That's the equivalent of it's about 120, about 100 or so calories per ounce or 2 tablespoons, which is 4 pumps. So that's roughly somewhere around 300 to 400 calories in liquid syrup alone, and then the 60-ounce Red Bull on top of it. So I do have customers that drink one or multiple of those on the daily. So and they don't have diabetes, at least not yet. So when you look at that Eldritch swirling forbidden coffee cup that I was discussing, that's only got in most cases like um, yeah, somewhere around like 4 ounces of syrup. So it's not even 4 to 5 ounces of syrup is not even 2 double Red Bulls of syrup. That's it's just barely more than someone's average thing. Um, yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna drink it. I don't want to end up in the Shadow Realm. Comfort chocolate. Um, yeah, I am absolutely supportive of comfort chocolate. That'll probably become a common thing once I actually sit down and make myself an introductory script. I do want anybody that comes in to join the stream to be having themselves a nice chill evening with their own particular form of a nightcap. For me, that's usually going to wind up being a very tiny amount of booze or a very tiny amount of cold coffee or something similar. But I am fully supportive of the idea of having like a nice midnight chai or a small amount of chocolate just to cap yourself off before you slip into bed, because that's good for the soul. Good for the May not be good for the heart, but it's good for the soul. Shlunja. Mm. Oh, that's right. This is a painting stream. I should be painting something, shouldn't I? Lint chocolate milk. I've always been a dark chocolate man myself, but I do have to say the best chocolate I have ever had in my life, despite myself, was a bar of white chocolate. My parents housed a foreign exchange student from. His family was from the Czech Republic, but they left in the 80s, prior to the wall coming down and everything, and they managed to make their way to Switzerland. And so he is by the region he lives in and the place he was raised after the age of like 4. He's Swiss, even though he's technically Czech. But yeah, it's Marcus. Marcus was his name, I believe. But he when he came back over, was it Marcus? No, it was something else. When he came back over to see us many years later, because he came over like when my mom was pregnant, and it was kind of funny. He saw her all the way through the pregnancy, and then he was only here for one school year, so he left like right before I was born. But he came back much later on, and he brought quite a few things with him. But that was one thing that he brought was like Swiss chocolatier chocolates, and it was funny because he was going through the whole thing, and this is this from this place, and this is this region's like national thing, like or like regional delicacy, and this one, and then he pulls a bar out and he goes, but this is what the rich people eat. And my dad and I were both like, we didn't say anything, but we were both very disappointed because it was a white chocolate bar, and we just don't like white chocolate. But he was just like, just try a little bit and savor it, and save the rest for later. And by God, that was easily the best chocolate I've ever had in my life. And I generally can't stand eating white chocolate, but holy shit. Oh my God. Jaeger tea? Oh, I see. Rum. That can still work out fine. I've had weirder drinks with tea. Alpine milk chocolate bars? Yeah. No, I'd like to find. I've never sat down to do it, but I would be very happy to find a semi-dedicated chocolatier to actually be able to regularly get chocolate that I really, really like from. Um, Not all the damn time, but just enough to where it's like any time that I feel like splurging or just being very decadent once every couple of months, I will reliably be able to have a chocolate bar sitting somewhere in the house that'll work out fine for that. Okay, so the flesh is now highlighted and it's pretty much good to go. I think for the time being, I'll do some more touch-up work later on. I think what I want to do most right now is a little bit of texture work. There's other things I could or possibly should be doing as far as efficiency goes in the painting method, but I don't give a shit because this is just me painting a little bit of something on stream for fun, and I'm not trying to speed paint these things. Not truly, at least. So, that means it's time for some texturing. One of my favorite things to do in painting. This is something I kind of started doing just of my own volition because I was like, hey, I just realized I can do this, and it's actually kind of neat, and I really enjoy the actual act of doing it. And nobody at that time, it wasn't like a very common. Like everybody, when you would look on mini painting YouTube, everyone was trying to do smooth blends everywhere, smoothest blends possible on everything at all times, wet blending, long periods of glazing, and so on and so forth. But most of the stuff that I was doing, I wasn't really necessarily going for like a grimdark look. I just wanted something a little bit more lived in most cases. So when contrast paints came out in particular, and right before they came out, I had actually found a transparent paint line that was very similar to what contrast paints wound up being. I started doing this where I find this easier to wrap my head around than doing the whole layering process, but taking something that's a relatively flat surface and then adding texture to it. Tiny little hash marks and lines and crisscrosses and things like that. But particularly on the edges of things. Like if you just take this right here and just start adding all these little things right here, it makes it look worn, like it's been used, but also like kind of torn in some cases. You know, little rips on the hem where it's been dragged along the ground or caught on things. These are zombies. They don't know what's going on with their clothes. They don't pay attention. They don't give a shit. So, is that a little bit blown out still, or is that okay? There we go. That's about right. So I just go along making all these, and then I will. Whoops, that's a bit much. Once I have done that to the point that I am satisfied with, I will then go back and apply another layer of just a very light glaze of the same color that I did on this already. And in some cases, I will do large amounts of like less textured stuff just to add that little bit of extra, like right there. That could use a little bit of actual shine, like it's actually being lit. So I'll just take and light that area so that when I add more, it'll show through as just a little bit brighter, a little bit warmer, like there's torchlight or something coming off of it. Check the chat. Call a good place in Salt Lake. Oh, I actually have family over there somewhere. At least I think I do. They may have moved. Camera, can you just focus? Yeah, I think I was trying to make it to where I made the miniature bigger in the view, but I think that predominantly I just wound up making it to where it was more out of focus because I'm not holding the miniature high enough for that level of focus. So I think it would be better if I just settle for it being more in focus and further down the way. You guys, I'm sure, can still probably see it all right. So, oh, C's candy. Yeah, no, C's is I'm surprised you don't have that. C's is like They are very good, but they're I'm fairly certain they're either a franchise or they're just like a major corporation thing. They're all over the place. I've got a C's in my mall, like our local mall here in a relatively small rural town, has a C's in its mall. Um, when I used to do, I was part of a Victorian musical and show thing when I was in high school, and that was part of the tradition. We would go around to all of the different schools and do caroling every year at all the elementary schools because we were all the high schoolers. And every year that we did that, we'd go all around town and then stop at the mall for lunch. And that was part of the tradition. Was all of the dudes had to go to the C's Candy because around Christmas time they call them C's Gars, which are chocolate cigars. So it was just kind of a joke. Everybody would go there. They're only a couple bucks, $4 or $5 or something like that. So everybody would always save a small amount of the allotment the school gave them. Also, please tell me how that focus is now. Uh, Everybody would save a couple of dollars out of the $10 the school would give us for lunch and go and buy a cigar so that we could toy around with them and act all hoity-toity in the common area. It was fun. Good times. Okay, let me read the chat. Two thick coats and dunk it in oil. No. Nuh-uh. Not this time around, at least. I do that in some cases on certain things. I've got a handful of armies that are almost exclusively speed paint projects, but many of them are like, oh, it's Necrons, so I'm going to speed paint them because they're entirely made out of metal with some shiny bits. So, but no, this is for Mordheim, where it's like I'm probably only going to be ever painting 15, maybe 20 miniatures maximum, and slowly over time. So, I like to take some time on them. Yeah, I'm surprised that they're not more around. Maybe it's just like C's has just been there forever, but they haven't ever actually had a ton of locations. It also could just be a West Coast thing. If they're in Utah, they're probably not too far off. Well, obviously they're literally not too far off from California, so maybe we on the West Coast have a higher proportion of them than other places in the nation. Same goes for In-N-Out, motherfuckers. As a Californian, I will say In-N-Out is good. In-N-Out is very good, but In-N-Out is not that good. Like, it's not often I don't feel it's good enough to warrant the massive lines that develop because they are one of those places that no matter what time you go, no matter what time of day you go, they will almost always just have a massive line all the way out and around the building. Unless you're really going on an off time at like something stupid like 10 o'clock in the morning or like 3:30 in the afternoon where nobody in their right mind is that has a normal 90% of people that have day jobs are not going to be taking their lunch at 3:30 or something like that. So, yeah, if you try to go in and out around dinner time, you're going to be waiting in the drive-through for probably at least like 25 to 30 minutes before you even get up to the window to get your food. All the little hash marks, all the little lines. Give it that texture. I forgot to kind of get this over here. Didn't really forget, just kind of started and didn't go with it. A little bit here so you can see if that's part of the dress. Okay. Okay. I was in the hobby shop a few times over with my dad. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but the black coach I think more than doubled in price when they remade a new version of it. But I do think I think that they made a new version of the black coach that's much bigger than the old one. I think the old one, like to scale with everything else in the game, kind of looked appropriate for like a little carriage coach. I assume that the new one, I think, is like part of the Nighthaunt army list for Age of Sigmar, so it's probably just like way big compared to the old one. At least that would be my assumption. But yeah, I was confused at that. I actually like semi panic bought a Coven Throne when I saw that price hike happen because I was afraid the same thing was going to happen with the Coven Throne, where it was just going to inexplicably go away one day and then be reintroduced in a slightly more bombastic version and be at the time it was still only like $60. I don't know what it is now. But I was like, I don't want to wait for 2 weeks and then have this thing come back in a new version for 145. I like it fine as it is at the price that it's at. So I have a Coven Throne somewhere that I need to build at some point, but that's a ways down the line. As far as like I've got a lot of other stuff to build up if I want to be able to ever use it. I need to have an army completely finished to use it with. Hmm. Gavar, I am painting a zombie. It is specifically a zombie for Mordheim. It is not an actual Mordheim miniature. It's a miniature from Heresy Labs does Kickstarters on occasion, and they have a line of minis that are old world minis, which are very clearly meant for Mordheim. So it's just kind of like a third party, very Mordheim-esque zombie model. This one happens to be a I don't know if she's supposed to be like a bar wench or like a merchant girl or something like that, but just average girl in a nice little dress um, with her cats, two little kitties. There's one up here on her back that is tearing off parts of her, eating little chunks of her skull and the flesh off of her, or little chunks of her brain and flesh off of her skull. And then she's got one down here on the inside of her robes that is currently taking a chunk out of her ankle meats. Cute little kitties. Let's see. Yeah, Mordheim is wonderful, and these miniatures from the Heresy Lab Kickstarter are just phenomenally characterful, and you can buy all the STLs for them, so you can 3D print them yourself if you don't want to buy their actual resin. Um, there's actually practically nothing on the secret menu. The secret menu, quote unquote, the only like item. I don't think there's actually an item that's on the secret menu. The only thing that's like truly on the secret menu is just the animal style thing, which is just a mild change to things, which is good to know. Everything else that's on the secret menu, which by the way is I think is on their website now, is just like a specific name for a way of ordering something. Like the double meat, it's just a double hamburger with no cheese. Or the 4x4, it's a 4 patty 4 cheese burger. You could just ask for that. Protein style, it's just a burger with lettuce wrap instead of buns. It's a normal lettuce wrap burger that you can get anywhere else. Also, it's In and Out is certainly not hot fucking garbage, but it's definitely, like I was saying, it's not worth the amount of time that you would have to spend and wait. It is absolutely worth the money, and that's one thing that people forget is like, I think that they changed their prices a little bit recently, but for a while it was like easily half the price of every other fast food place on the market. Like I used to be able to go there and reliably the double hamburger for quite a long time. I remember it being like 2.59 for the hamburger and then like 2.49 for the fries. And to get an equivalent hamburger from anywhere, uh, Carl's Jr.'s or like the Big Mac from McDonald's or something like that was like $5 or $6, and it's just gotten more expensive. So it was neat to be able to have an option to get something like that that was clearly higher quality of ingredients than everywhere else, at least nutritionally. For in some cases literally half the price for an equivalent thing. They have changed their prices now, so they're a little more expensive, but everyone else is also still way more expensive. But that also is a consideration that really only matters. Like, people will talk better about In and Out when they live next to an In and Out. It's not the kind of place that's a destination you should always, always, always hit um, when you're in the area. But it's like if you live in the area, it's always worth just going like every couple of weeks if you like hamburgers and you don't have like a way, way, way preferred local place. I usually only hit them up at this point whenever it's like all of the places I like that are locally owned are all closed because they're one of the few hamburger places besides like fucking McDonald's that are open until like 1 in the morning or something like that. So let me catch back up with the chat here. I think that's probably approaching good on the texturing, so I'll go back in for the green again in a second. Time check, 12 o'clock, still doing good. Alright. Um, better menus than GW. Yeah, see, that's the thing that is kind of an interesting paradox. Like, from a painter's perspective and stylistic choices aside, there are certain problems I do have with some Games Workshop models, especially the ones where they fucking bedeck them like Christmas trees with just so many little bits and bobs. But I will say it's just one of those sort of things like Games Workshop's miniatures are not across the board better or worse than most other people's. If you want miniatures that are equivalent to or better in detail and quality than even some of Games Workshop's just average miniatures, like just the shit that they make for something like Warcry. Oh, that's completely white, so you're not going to see it. In most cases, to truthfully get something that, like, on every level of craft and craft materials, like the quality of pulling out of the mold and everything with the mold lines and whatnot, all those elements, things will be as expensive as Games Workshop. Rarely more expensive, because when you get into the more expensive than Games Workshop realm, that's where you get into um, their display models. So they are very clearly going to be much higher level. It's something that Games Workshop doesn't provide. But the main point is just that, broadly speaking, people don't try to actually do the same thing that Games Workshop does. They're not producing the same kind of miniature at the same price point. But for the purposes of having a base to make something look nice, there are plenty of, like, yeah, pretty much everybody else makes something that's acceptable and can made to be, with a good paint scheme, look as good as a Games Workshop miniature for a significantly smaller price. Um, the actual miniatures themselves, it just comes down to the argument of, like, does the extra quality, detail, and whatnot actually matter to you? And if it doesn't, then you shouldn't value it that high. But yes, that you are correct on that. That's the huge thing that I always go back to is, like, I play Imperial Guard and I hear there's new Cadians on the way, but I'm still using the same fucking Cadian models and would be buying the same ones that I've been buying since I started playing 40k, approaching 15 years ago at this point. So it's like we had a handful of new things made here and there, but Eldar were another one where it's like until very recently it was just like, Jesus, how long are we going to go without a refresh? So, yeah, that is absolutely true. But when it comes to discussing certain batches of modern miniatures that they make, it becomes a little bit more difficult. I just can't truck with the pricing model that they maintain for even shitty old models like that haven't gotten updated in ages. Let's see. What is Arctic Circle? Out of curiosity. Yeah, Forge World is. Games Workshop has some serious issues and some serious good points at times, which is part of the reason why I very, very rarely buy actual Games Workshop models anymore. I either use third party stuff like this or buy them off of eBay or something similar, or from my friendly local gaming store or something like that. Forge World is one that I just had zero I've never bought a Forge World model, and I never will, as far as I'm aware. Just because it's just like I couldn't justify when I looked at it most of the stuff that they were doing, where it's like they have fallen so far behind the rest of the market in so many different ways, but they just continue. Their pricing model just keeps on getting more and more wacky over time, where the same deathcore models that they've been producing for forever just kept on going up in price, up in price, and up in price. Wonderful, wonderful models, and they are still really fucking cool, but they still do not hold a candle to like modern resin miniatures. Do not like Forge World's modern resin miniatures are Forge World's miniatures compared to other modern resin companies are just it's a night and day difference. Having worked with many hundreds of both, or of the yeah, having worked with hundreds of both of them because I've helped friends assemble significant numbers of Forge World stuff. But yeah, I don't know what was going on with that, but that is I do think I don't know what's going to happen long term, but I think that's why all of the new Horus Heresy stuff is being produced by Games Workshop in plastics is just because they realize that it's something that they can practically print money by offering games like that and models like that that people do like as long as they just keep it out of Forge World. Oh, good burger joint. Okay. GW does not price things based off of how strong they are in game, at least not all the time. I used to feel that way also, but there was a time where I was making that argument, and I can't remember what they were for the life of me off the top of my head. So um, please don't take this as a given or as actual like hard truth. But there was a time where I was making that same argument, and someone like straight just laid out here's 15 different kits that were released in the last X number of months. Here's their prices. Here's how useful they actually are, and they were all. It was almost exactly flipped, where it's like the cheapest models were the best, and the most expensive models were absolutely the worst at the time. At the time that they were released, so it's not that they were like pricing changes and rules and points changes are another argument that you totally still can make, where they can take things. I have seen that happen sometimes where they'll take models that are currently extremely popular and then uh, make the that are very popular but cheap and make them awful, and then take the models that are very expensive and suddenly make their rules good, or do the same thing with new models. I've seen that happen, but I haven't seen that happen. It's one of those sort of things you can't state that that has happened across the board at all times, and it's not enough of a thing for it to truly be like a trend that you can rely on. You can't always point to it and say the expensive models are the best models and the cheapest models are the worst models. There's always things that break that mold to the point that it's not a claim that I would make. Yeah, you have a good night, TK. TK45546713. You are dismissed. Uh, yeah, that's a better take on it. GW prices things based on how much they think they can get away with scalping their fans. Yeah, that's a. Oh god, the bulkhead bonk. Yeah, I forgot about that. I love that scene. Um, Also, keep in mind, please, I do agree with you. Where it's like I am 110%. I much more deeper into supporting independent companies um, than I am into supporting Games Workshop and Forge World. But I just have I have a propensity for playing Angel's Advocate when when I see people starting to get wrapped up into um, too much of just the hate, just pure hate for something across the board without consideration of fact, or simply just having a sentiment and sticking with the sentiment. I often try to stop when I notice myself doing it. I stop myself and go like, well, these parts may be true, but I can't verify these certain parts here and there. So you may hear me speak very kindly about things like Games Workshop and whatnot, but please understand that's not. I'm not meaning that that I like support their actions as a company in any particular way. It's just one of those like I just like to stop and think about sometimes, and stop and talk about it in a more in a more straightforward sense like that, as opposed to just continuing to continue to say the same things I've heard from many people complaining over the time. Not saying that's what you were doing, but point of that mostly, I just want to clarify. I do not really support Games Workshop or Forge World. I just can't deny that there are some things that I've heard other people point out before that make me go pause and go, huh, I guess in reality, not everything is like absolutely patently awful about them. Just the majority. Just the majority of their business practices and pricing. So all I'm doing with this right here is now that I added all of that texture, I took the same contrast paint that I put on here earlier, but I put way, way less of it on the brush. I predominantly put a fair amount on the brush, but then wicked it off on the inside of the bottle, and also wicked it off on this piece of paper in a wet spot to draw out quite a lot of the of what was left in the brush. So I'm essentially just glazing at this point. Bit of a heavy glaze, but it's just enough to kind of add a little bit of blending, because it's like it's not going to really darken everything down, all the green that's already on there. Most of what I'm doing here is just making it to where it's going to tint and color all of that ivory that I put on here earlier, so it looks more like it's just a warmer version of that same cloth, where it's either catching the light or where it's been kind of torn away at, because that's commonly what happens when you look at, like, if you have a pair of jeans or something like that, um, or something that's actually made out of wool or thick cotton, like these older clothing and cloth might be. Commonly, when you kind of wear away at something, it will be a lighter version of itself until it gets down to like the bare color of what the thread was before it was dyed. So adding a little bit of ivory gets that effect and also gets a little bit of warmth in there, so it gives a sort of like feeling of, natural light typically is sunlight. If I had wanted this to be moonlight, which I could have gone for and I had thought about doing, I could have done this with a colder highlight color, like a glacier blue, or at least mixed a little bit into there. But this time around, I didn't feel like that, because so much of her is already going to be kind of cold, and I did some purple undertones and whatnot, and I don't want everything in my... Like, I've done some forces in Moonlight entirely before, and they were fun, but I don't want that to all look exactly that way. I feel like just from a visual interest standpoint, I like taking this green and making all of the elements on its highlighting be relatively warm, and the same thing with that purple. I like the look that it gives as sort of a nice, warmer, more lively contrast to the very, very dead body that's on the inside of the robes. So just taking that over and over and over, trying to find the points where it still kind of sticks out the most, where it seems like I can sort of still see it as ivory more than I do as a lighter version of that color. And get those two up there that I forgot about. And then that's probably... It's about good as far as the application of that goes. So here's the end result of all that I was just doing with all that texture. I don't know how well it'll come out in your view. Hopefully you'll be able to see some of that, where it's like now it looks like all of those edges have little nicks and scratches all over it, like it's worn, and it's picked up a lot of places where it's been torn and whatnot. I'll probably later on go and add some more like crosses and dots and things like that to make it look like it's just been torn up in different places, but there are some 3D modeled in areas where that is already there. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, you have a good rest of your day, German. I'm sure you're probably not even in here at this point, but still, in case you hear it again at some point. Why bother with the official GW minis? Usually, the reason I bother with the official GW minis is at this point, it's because they specifically make something that nobody else. I am much more into the painting and hobbying aspect of it than the playing at this point, and I don't make a ton of money, but I save enough money to where when I pick and choose, I kind of don't have any problem money wise with Games Workshop things. And I have been collecting for long enough that I'm not at any given time ever trying to. I'm not building entire armies at this point. Like I got into Adeptus Titanicus specifically because this is a Warhound Titan. That's one model, not particularly huge, not particularly small. It was very fun to build and paint. I had a good time with it. And all my army needs to be for Solaria to play most of the games that I want to do with my friends is like four of these and one larger Titan. And you can get all of that in a box for less than $100. So it's like I can start and finish an entire army of Adeptus Titanicus stuff for cheaper than the price of most board games are that are large scale board games at this point that I would play as much as Adeptus Titanicus. Um, it's like I'm not sitting down and saying that Games Workshop's miniatures are actually good and I would absolutely pay for an entire Imperial Guard army's worth of them anymore. No, no, I have an Imperial Guard army. I have a Vampire Counts army. Both of them have some GW models and significant portions of third-party miniatures. But what I come down to is like, why do I have uh, Games Workshop stuff for Warcry? Well, it's because I really fucking liked this model and the models that came with him, and I have not found, even though I've gone looking for them, I haven't found a miniature that has this He-Man energy like this guy has that strikes me in exactly the same way that makes me go, I want to paint that in that, I want to paint that guy in that size and that pose in the way that I did. And this was a miniature that like hit me and I was just like, that is the miniature that I want to learn how to use oil paints on. And so I didn't for much of like the skin specifically on this guy is all done with oil paints. So I went and bought the kit because it was I want to say it was like $60 for a double pack of the Warcry guys when I bought them as a Slaves to Darkness thing. So it came out to, I think, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think there were about 20 to 24 models in that kit for like $60. That's $3 a model. That is cheaper than most other similarly made and priced things on the market. Even from cheaper companies like Mantic, you'll be getting things that are half the size of this guy and don't have the same amount of details. So I will still do it for very specific times when I can look at it with the eye that I have now for miniature value and go, that is worth the value in plastic, but also one of the rare occasions where it's like that's worth the experience to me of that miniature on its own more so than any other miniature in the same style that even when I went and looked for third-party versions or STLs, that one was the one that hit me, and I went, that one is the one that I want to learn how to do oil paints on. And I wouldn't have learned how to do oil paints that quickly if I hadn't actually done it. All right, you have a good rest of your night, then, Cookie. Um, let's see here. Is that a Banshee? Is what a Banshee? The mini I was working on, or something else? But yeah, that's just one of those sort of things where it's like GW is not a company that is like I will disagree with them because of mild business practices with regards to pricing. It's not they're not a company that's like they're not to the same level as many of the companies that you hear of that are like major ethical problems like Hobby Lobby being embroiled in an art theft scandal where they've stolen um apparently stolen hundreds of thousands to $1 million worth of art from various different cultures around the world or something like that, or been part of a scandal like that. Games Workshop just charges a little bit too much for their miniatures. Like that's the scandal. That's it. They're just a little expensive. So when it comes down to it, like I said, some of the stuff that they do with it you could potentially see as being predatory, but this is just a hobby. It's not like this is a game. It, this isn't like a video game where your only option is pay out the nose or lose, and there's more to this hobby than quality in the game. So when it comes down to it, it's just I'm placing my money where I would place my money on based on like the quality of the sculpting of the plastic, and how much I want to paint that subject matter. If someone else made what Games Workshop made in some very specific ways, I would absolutely buy it from someone else before Games Workshop, even if it were the same price. But all the Games Workshop models I buy at this point are not something I can get anywhere else. Everything that I want that I can get from Games Workshop that I can get from somewhere else, I always do. But on the off chance I see something that just screams to me that I absolutely want that experience of painting it, I don't mind paying for it, depending on the price. Oh yeah, the fan artist thing also. That's the big thing. That's like the only thing that I can remember recently. There's been some other things that were also strange, but also can be chalked up to like things that they should have rectified in different ways, like Finecast, where they literally I have friends that like had White Dwarf articles and things like that printed out. That's like they stated that Finecast miniatures would be better and the resin would be cheaper, so the models would be cheaper. And as we all know, Finecast is just hot garbage compared to every other form of miniature they've ever produced. And it wound up being way. They started making it way, way, way more expensive than anything else they offered. So that's one of those sort of things where it's like, yeah, I don't. That should have been rectified in a completely different way, but nobody had to buy. Well, no, some people did have to buy Finecast, and that was shitty. But again, like I said, that's nothing on the level of like an actual ethical scandal that I would have boycotted them for. The only thing I can think of like that is the press ganging of fan artists, which was still strange, but at the same time, I also it's like that's nothing more than what any other company could potentially do if they wanted to. That's just how copyright laws work across the board for pretty much everyone. But they're just like the first people to really persecute it in the way that we notice like that. Yeah, God, I miss TTS so much. Anyways, obligatory BPL bingo card. Fuck Games Workshop. So let's see here. What am I missing? Black Cat on the top is actually kind of, frankly, I'm okay with him just kind of being how he is. I might add a little bit more highlighting just on the ears, tail, and whatnot, but I like him as he sits right now. So I'm gonna go for, now that I've done her skirt, I'm gonna go for like the little pouch and whatever that little. I can't tell what that is. Is that a bone on her hip? Like that thing that's on her little belt dealio. I think it looks almost like someone's a rib bone or something like that. I can't tell. If you have any idea what that is, please let me know. But I've got no clue. Okay, that pouch definitely looks like leather to me, so I'm going with my go-to leather contrast paint, which is not a leather at all. It's actually a Fire Slayer flesh, which, when I think about it, is, I guess, somewhat appropriate for that look of special leather. But if you do it enough times, it goes from looking like skin to looking like a leather with a very orange tint to it, which I quite like. So just do that once and then leave it be, and then do it again and then leave it be. Keep on doing it until you reach the color that you want. So I got that. Yeah. Mm, that didn't taste good. Probably shouldn't have done that. I don't remember what kind of paints I have inside that paint water. Mm. Primaris are fine from a hobbying standpoint. It's one of those sort of things where if Space Marines had always been Primaris Marines, nobody would blink. But the method they had to go about implementing them into lore was just like they had to find a way to get it in there. There was really no other way other than shoehorning it in. No way that they introduced Primaris would have made people happy. But they've introduced Primaris, and now we have true scale Marines that look more accurate to what they probably intended them to be, at least since about 4th or 5th edition or so. And they vastly more appeal to a younger audience because they are much more in line um, with the like communal pop culture head image of science fiction in a post Halo world. Ever since Halo and a handful of other games and shows came out, there's been a dramatic shift in the depiction of things like powered armor soldiers in science fiction. That was just I always kind of used that in my head as kind of like the turning point. Um, so everything after that point, you start seeing a shift towards having somewhat sleeker, but no less effective, but somewhat more graceful elements of super soldier programs and powered armor. Same goes for ships. It's where you start getting away from Star Wars and more towards well, any other things. But yeah, that's just Primaris is partially there to bring it to the true scale and give you a better differentiation between normal human and space marine than you ever had before, and um, make sure that they are making room for a new generation of players because the older generations of players are going to start dying soon. Yeah, I really enjoyed Halo Infinite, but I am kind of right there with you. It was mostly just for me the departure from the art style. I had problems with in Halo 4 and 5 just as far as being able to get into them. I couldn't get into them very easily because of the fact that I was just like, this just doesn't have the feel that I was looking for. Even if it was like, the branding was still there, the weapons were still kind of there, but it's just like it didn't feel fun in some cases, just because the sounds were not really what I was looking for. Although some of them were excellent, some of the sound design was excellent, but a lot of the redesigns of a lot of the visual redesigns were just a little bit difficult for me to really jive with. I was happy that they kind of pulled back on that in many ways in Infinite, but either way, that still the concept of the post Halo thing still kind of sits for me as being relatively true. Where did the Golem thing go? There we go, Sand Golem. I think this is roughly equivalent to Guerrero's Tunes, one of those new Army Painter speed paints. I just wanted to see what it looks like if I put this on her little belt thing. Maybe I'll try it on her hair too, depending on how it goes. Let's see, far fewer people would have been angered if they didn't have to buy their entire. Yeah, that was the thing that was also would have been my sticking point too, because I tried to picture it as like an Imperial Guard player. It's one thing when you're using the exact same army and you're simply not offering the old models, but the army is still the same. Like I could take a Praetorian army and use the Imperial Guard Codex from today and make a perfectly workable and tournament legal um, army list because they've never taken that away. But the whole change that they went through with the Primaris to where they've essentially, in the very beginning, many of my friends were complaining about that, just like trying to do the doomsaying thing of like, oh God, this is awful. They're going to completely replace um, the original Space Marines. All of our armies are fucked now. We'll have to rebuy our whole armies. I was like, they're never going to do that. They're not going to they learned their lesson with Age of Sigmar, and they know that people want to continue using those old models. But I mean, I get that there are still the rules are out there for them, but it's been amazing how few things they're still supported in many cases, and the fact that they're clearly not going to be getting any re-release sort of things or any other support was just a bit odd to me. I really didn't expect that to happen. That's my big sticking point with Primaris also. On pretty much every other front, I've got no problem with them. But yeah, I had wished that they would just stick with them um, as like just a new thing. Like if all the Space Marine legions kept their original Space Marines and then only brought in Primaris as new recruits. But let's see. The exoskeleton. Yeah, the Dread Knight, the baby carrier. Oh, I didn't expect for this to become a GW bashing stream, but well, here we are. I can jive with it. That's what chat wants to go to, then that's what chat wants to go to. Although I can always drag it in some different way. Long story short, I don't really give a shit about most modern Games Workshop stuff. Doesn't really interest me all that much as far as the gameplay goes, with a handful of exceptions. Like I said, Warcry is up there, but outside of that, I don't play modern 40k at this point anymore. I might do some 3rd edition, 4th edition stuff with some friends, but it's basically just Warcry and Adeptus Titanicus. If they add vehicle construction rules, I might actually play Necromunda Ash Wastes if I can kit bash my own vehicles and things. I have some Enforcers left over from quite a while ago that I could totally turn into Ash Wastes, like a sheriff posse sort of thing. But after using the initial ones, I'd just wind up using third-party stuff anyways. I hear Age of Sigmar is actually pretty excellent right now. I haven't played it at all. Here's the fun thing for you, though, Cake Boss. Um, there's nothing to stop you from playing Warhammer games without purchasing a single Games Workshop product directly from them, aside from the desire to play at Games Workshop stores or in tournaments that actually enforce that. I've probably got tens of thousands of points of Imperial Guard purely due to the fact that I use third-party miniatures in many cases that bulk things out for me. I'm not talking about recasters. Just you can find, because Games Workshop IP is the most popular war game IP out there. You can find third-party everything for them, and you can find shitloads of them on eBay, and you can easily find the rules elsewhere, not just at used bookstores and things like that, or friends that are getting out of the hobby, or similar things, or again eBay for very, very cheap. You can play previous editions of it as well if you disagree with 9th edition. You just want to stick with something like 5th edition or earlier. So, if you are really interested in an IP, you can still totally play without having to engage with the IP makers at all, aside from the fact that you're theoretically, that becomes more of an ethical, moral discussion as to whether or not you're supporting the IP by raising awareness of it. But if you and all of your friends are aware of that and all get your miniatures, rules, and whatnot elsewhere, then hey, no one, GW does not benefit in any way from it, and you still enjoy a product that they've made. But the bad taste in your mouth is perfectly acceptable reason to not want to interact with something like that. Oh yeah, tabletop simulator absolutely is a fine way to play plenty of different things. It sometimes takes a little bit of legwork insofar as like I tried playing BattleTech with a friend and it totally worked, but I had to get like 18 different modules and pull elements from each one of them and drag them into my own custom module to have all the pieces of things that I wanted to use, all the all the models, all the terrain, all the effects, all the tokens, the dice, the auto calculating tables and things like that. So, and yeah, I have seen that they have had a Twilight Imperium thing that was looked pretty phenomenal on it. Let's do one more set of Fyreslayer flesh on that pouch. There we go. That'll be good. Nice little brown pouch now. Okay, I don't think there's anything on this miniature that is now uncolored. So I'm just going to keep moving on with getting a couple more things set. I'll probably call it here in not too long because it's fast approaching 1 a.m. for me, and I do need to get up in the morning to go to work. Not particularly early, though, thankfully. Mostly just run supplies tomorrow. Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying, Cake Boss, but it's also one of those sort of things that it should, in my opinion, and the way that I look at it, is like I have to temper myself from just assuming that they're incorrect, but just always take things with a grain of salt. Usually, when I hear someone say X has gotten much better, I always try to make a mental bookmark to look into it deeper, more than what they tell me. Though I do try to take note of what they've told me, um, so that I can remember what to actually look at specifically. But um, simply saying don't buy it because normally people are like that is just that's cynicism talking, not necessarily reality. Because you never know what's actually going to wind up being the result, and often things do get much better with time. I don't know about 76 specifically. I had some friends that played it at launch but haven't checked back in with them. But it's just one of those sort of things where all it takes in some cases is, especially with video games, bug fixes and content. That's usually all people need to be able to enjoy a game that they couldn't enjoy at the beginning. And I know this is Bethesda we're talking about, so yeah, haha, buggy Bethesda game joke, no quality content, no balls get good scrub, but um, it's one of those sort of things where it can still totally get better over time. So I'm always willing to look into it when someone mentions that, because it really doesn't take much for things to get better when they're given enough time, if people just actually put the effort in. Sorry, not trying to actually act like I'm lecturing you or anything like that, but just at least trying to keep the chat going. And it is one of those sort of things where like inherent worldview and everything aside, it all also comes down to just like coincidence and statistics and whatnot. So there's no way of knowing if everything that you run into is truly going to be. I could be completely wrong. Everything you run into could totally wind up being, when that statement is said, everyone that you hear it from, just based on the people that you hear it from, or just sheer coincidence, that could always be completely incorrect. and I'm not one to say that that's not going to be. Jesus Christ. New subject. Oh, you got one for me? Oh, I forgot about her hair. Hmm. You know what? I actually think I'm going to leave her hair as it is, at least for the time being, and just do highlighting later on. I like the idea that maybe she was just a crazy old cat lady. Yeah, let's make her old. She was an old lady that owned a lot of cats, and unfortunately, she is now a zombie. So I'm going to have her have gray hair. So I'll do a little bit more work with that at some point in the future once I've sat down and thought about how I want to do that. I've never done a model with gray hair before. Um, that wasn't just a really quick shit job with dark gray wash. Yeah, I think the hair can. Well, yeah, I think that can sit how it is. Um, Video games. What the fuck have I been playing recently? Since the marathon or the fucking Mandalore video came out, it reminded me that I was like halfway through a Marathon 2 playthrough, so I've been going back through that again. If you have never played Proto Halo, it's actually um, like watch the Mandalore video and realize that it does have not necessarily issues, but it's not once you get used to the way that it flows and the way that the controls and everything kind of function, the combat and everything, it's a very fun game. But it is not. It doesn't feel tight and furious like most other FPS games of the time, and the floatiness really does take some getting used to. Um, but it's a fun game for what it is, especially for, like you said, the price of free. I've actually been meaning to do myth at some point, but we'll see what happens. I do have Oni somewhere that I never got around to playing. Yeah, exactly. She was mostly eaten by her cats. Exactly. Maybe they got the. That could have been how she got zombified. One or more of her cats may have gotten zombified out somewhere else, and then they came in and bit her. And now she's doing her best to live her best cat life in the undead. Yeah, no, Marathon is not a masterpiece at all. It's just fun for someone who was a huge Halo nerd to see the template laid down, see all of the early groundwork for what would become Halo um, in its early stages. Look at all of the similarities. Look at all the places where clearly Halo took inspiration and ran with it. I keep on thinking as I'm playing this game, playing the marathon games again, because I'm halfway through Durandal and soon to be into Infinity. I keep on stopping and going like, man, it would be really neat to see like a modern take on Marathon. Like if someone like New Blood went and did a new take on Marathon, then I just keep on having to stop and go, yeah, but that's Halo. That's all Halo ever was. Um, it would be fun to see a New Blood interactive take on the Marathon style game, though. Get a little bit of red in that area on those rib cage bones. I'll add some actual gore effect later on, but for now, get that on that cat's the little holes in the cats where they've been chewed on or something. Same here where I accidentally got some ivory. Bit there. I think just for funsies before I call this quits, I'll at least give her another round of the purple on her dress in the areas where it hasn't really shown up much. Just because I don't want it to be like light and splotchy on everything. I want it to be as close to kind of a base coat as possible, so I can go work on it later on with doing some highlights and some darkening down to make it more wine colored. And this is water thin, so I'm not really filling anything up with this when I go apply it, as far as like filling up any detail goes. Gotta get the back side. And now that I've decided that she's going to be an old lady, honestly, that kind of fuchsia purple colored shirt with the green dress underneath, that feels very grandma. So once I deaden that down a little bit and darken it a little bit more, I think that that'll read very nice. That's a very nice. Okay. Oh, hey Zinthar, how you doing? I hadn't. I'm fairly certain that if New Blood's been talking about cryptocurrency, they're probably just shitposting. I haven't really been keeping up with them though. Oh wait, no. So yeah, Dave Oshry is into cryptocurrency. It was initially just shitposting. That's right. I remember him being into Dogecoin when the GameStop thing was happening. But NFTs, I think, is the main thing that they like to shitpost about. Um, yeah, Marathon is that's a difficult one. It's just one of those sort of things where it's not. I wouldn't go and say like, oh, it needs to be on a greatest games of all time list. But it's a game that I thoroughly enjoy, not because of the fact that it's the proto Halo game, but because I actually do really dig a lot of elements about it, including the story, and the not just the story, but like the way the story was presented. It feels novel to me, and I kind of enjoyed that hybrid of text adventure and first-person shooter game. I felt like a lot of elements about it were very creative, even if they weren't executed particularly smoothly. So, all right, I think that's about enough as far as the painting element goes for me tonight. So, let me get this hit back to the thing to where you can actually see the to where you can more clearly see the other stuff, just so it kind of looks a little bit pretty there in the background. And focus. Whoop. There we go. So, pseudo post stream wrap up. What do you guys actually think about it? And like, what can I do better next time aside from aside from avoiding going on Games Workshop tirades? Uh, from a Twitch viewer perspective, what did I do correctly? What did I do wrong? Did I commit any faux pas? Are there any things that you can think of that I could do to improve the next time that I do this, and so on and so forth, because I do intend to continue doing this. I'll probably somewhat randomly pop on, as far as like I don't think I'll have a set weekly day or something like that, but I'll try to like once every other week or once a week or so. I'm predominantly going to try to do like basically, I'm just going to call it like a nightcap stream, where I want to do something that's very late night for a lot of people to catch the night owls, because I am, even though I'm West Coast, I am a night owl. That's why I'm getting off now at like 1 o'clock, is so I take another hour or so before I'm actually going to fall asleep at like 2. But mostly I just want to have something that's like a chill, low energy stream where I'm just kind of doing my thing and trying to make something that's nice to have on in the background and not necessarily doesn't really require a ton of engagement. Little bit of information, not a whole ton of lecturing, so on and so forth. I'll probably get more. Today I was a little bit nervous, so I was probably a little higher energy than I otherwise will be. I don't actually drink all that much coffee for being the coffee baron. Maybe just an espresso shot a day, but yeah, we should make a feedback form. That would be phenomenal. Also, out of curiosity for future ones, do you think that? Oh, oh, well, you guys picked the wrong time to raid. Sorry. Uh, Thank you for joining in and seeing what I'm up to. But I was just about to sign off for the evening in about 5 minutes or so. You can see me next time, I suppose. Here's what you guys missed. Or, not really missed, but like, here's all I was actually up to. Oh, right, the zoom is out. Let me put that back really quick. Or the focus. Focus. Focus! All you missed was me going start to from Prime to this point, basically. Just some old lady who unfortunately got zombified by her cats. Got bit by one of them at some point after they got turned into a zombie, and then now she's a zombie, and now they're chewing on her. It was fun. There was a lot of bitching about Games Workshop in between, but mostly it was just trying to be chill with all of it. So, I enjoyed myself. Not bad for our first stream, I don't think, but um, question for the few of you guys that are here also. What are your thoughts on if I add music, like background music? Like I was thinking about doing like some quiet jazz or something similar. Um, Lower than my own voice. Honestly, low enough that you probably wouldn't really notice it unless you're paying attention when I'm not saying anything, but just something to kind of fill the voids and just give something to kind of set the chill mood. Yeah, no lyrics. It might not necessarily be all jazz, but I think that that would be the majority of what I would do. I just gotta actually like make a oops, sorry, gotta make a playlist on academic or something like that, so I can just have that going in the background. But, oh, there was a follow. Thank you for the follow, also. Oh, rain effects. Yeah, that would be lovely. Yeah, rain sound effects with a little bit of jazz would actually be pretty phenomenal. Good to pair with a small amount of coffee and a small amount of alcohol. But okay, let's see. Stream Halo 3 ODST. Yeah, not a bad idea. Oh, for the copyright smacks, most like if I'm gonna do any music at all, it would just be through the Epidemic Sound account, so it'd all be royalty free. But I could do both jazz music and rain sound effects and see how that goes. Might try that next time. Oh, that's actually a neat concept. So you, what you're saying is like you play Spotify yourself in your own headphones, and then, or, oh, are you talking about like a Spotify thing with royalty-free music, or? Yep. Have a good night, Thunderclap. All right. Have it going through the stream. Oh, stream beats. Okay. Yeah. Well then, let me just uh, and that'll do it for my nightcap. Well, all right. Thank you guys all for showing up. Thank you for the raid, and thank you for the few of you that actually stuck around through the whole thing. I am going to log off for the time being. Normally, hopefully in the future, I'll have an actual outro. It's got some music and things like that. We'll get to that at some point, but for the time being, you guys enjoy the rest of your evenings, and I will see you to make the mecha. Oh, god damn it. Really? Fine. There. Nova and a supernova, so it's a little bit of incest. You okay? Is that good? You happy? You happy now? Fucking degenerates. Oh god. All right. You guys have a good rest of your night. Hey, he asked for it. Good night. I'll see you guys next time. And with that, we end the stream.